This is the Influencer Entrepreneurs Podcast with Jenny Melrose, where I strategize with business owners on how to grow and scale their businesses to hit their income goals. This is episode 262 of the Influencer Entrepreneurs Podcast with Jenny Melrose. Today, I'm speaking with Debbie Garttner, and we are going to be diving into how to optimize a blog post for SEO. So as we all know, SEO is always updating. Google is always updating what is expected. We are going to be talking about the latest and greatest, what is working. So before we dive into that, you're also going to hear us emphasize the fact that SEO is amazing for driving traffic to your site, but you also want to grow your email list. So I want to make sure that if you haven't already grabbed my email list guide, that you do so. Send me a DM on Instagram at Jenny_Melrose, and I will send you that email list guide. You absolutely have to be growing your list. We know that. We've talked about that. If this is your first time here, make note. You are going to hear me say that plenty of times moving forward. It is great to drive traffic, but you have to get them as return customers, return people coming to your site. So make sure that you grab that guide. Just send me a DM. All right, you guys, let's dive in. Hi, Debbie. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks. How are you?
Very good. I'm so excited to have this conversation about how to optimize a blog post for SEO. But before we dive in, will you introduce yourself and your business to my audience?
Sure. My name is Debbie Garttner, and I'm known online as the Flooring Girl. You can find me at theflooringgirl.com. And I've been blogging since 2010, and I started my site in 2011. I originally had a local flooring store. So I used to go to people's homes and help them pick out the right flooring. And I started my site to help with that, just to get local customers. And it actually worked out quite well. So I learned how to do SEO really well between 2010 and 2012 and started generating a lot of local customers. I didn't care about, traffic. I only wanted local traffic. Yeah. But I attracted both kind of by accident. So we started to get a lot of calls from people in my local area. I live in New York, just outside New York City. And we got a lot of local customers. And then over time, it became, they were like the better customers, like higher quality leads than any of the other places that I was doing my marketing to. And then I kept getting more and more traffic, again, kind of by accident, because I'm not trying to get traffic. But then I had like maybe 150,000 page views a month with really trying. Okay. And by the way, only doing one blog post a month too. So it wasn't like I was blogging like crazy, just, kind of doing it that way. And then some people know my story after that. So the end of 2016, my life kind of fell apart. And I had to give up my business temporarily for 2 years because I had a non-compete. And I found myself $238,000 in debt without a source of income, living in a very high cost of living area because I'm in one of the expensive counties of the country. So I had to basically restart and figure out what the heck I was going to do. I had 3 weeks worth of savings and I didn't want to lose my home, which I owned. I mean, it's a condo and that made everything even more complicated. So I decided to try to learn how to monetize my blog. Like I had heard a little bit before that you could do that. I didn't know how, but I figured, well, I got the hard part down. I know how to do SEO. I, should be able to learn all this other stuff and let's, try it out. But I knew it would take a long time because everything in blogging takes a long time. And everything I had set up was not set to monetize. It was set to drive local customers to my flooring store that no longer existed. And I couldn't say yes to anyone who was asking for my help. So I decided to take on 2 part-time jobs. So I knew how to do blogging, I knew how to do SEO. So I did that for some local companies and earned some money that way. So quickly I was earning, well, depends your definition of quickly, but when you're about to lose everything, everything takes way longer than what you think it will. But by the third month or so, I was making maybe $4,000 a month, not from my blog, but from the freelancing work. And my blog, I was making maybe $1,500 a month because I had a head start, with all this traffic already and everything. And then I basically took on a second part-time job. So I was doing not flooring, painting estimates. So I basically painting and flooring go together. So I knew a lot of painters, and people do that at the same time. We'd have, our appointments or estimates at the same time. When someone's moving into a new home, they often need to do both. So I basically called all the painters I knew, and I literally begged for a job. And this was, January of 2017. And, here in New York, it snows every January and no one does many home renovations. So they all basically said no, maybe in the spring when it gets warmer, which basically meant April, and I had to survive. So then one person that I knew basically said no, but then he came back to me 24 hours later and said, I don't really need your help, but I do know you're really good with color. I know you're good with a customer. So I'm willing to give this a shot, commission only. So basically, it didn't really cost him much of any money. And for me, it was only my time, which at the time I had no money. I just had time. So I did that and then made some money from that, and then learned how to monetize my blog in parallel. So I'm basically bringing in money to buy time, if you will, to pay the bills while I learn how to monetize the blog. So that's what I did. From there, and my plan originally was to go back to flooring after 2 years because then I could. But during those 2 years, I ended up making a bunch of money after a while, and I didn't really need to go back to flooring. So I was still in debt then because I had $238,000 in debt, which takes a long time to go through. So I did a little bit of stuff in the side, but I didn't want to or need to go back to flooring because I'm like, oh my God, my blog is making a lot of money. So maybe I can do this and make flooring my side hustle instead of vice versa. So
right. No, absolutely. Very good. No, that's excellent. So you obviously knew what you were talking about when it came to SEO. That was how you were able to establish your site. So what would you say is the first step in optimizing a blog post for SEO?
Yeah. So first of all, I would say before you even get to that point, you want to know your niche and your target customer. So prior to this, I used to do marketing in a previous life. I worked at a company you might have heard of called P&G, Procter & Gamble, and some other companies. And it was always the idea of everything starts with the consumer and immerse yourself in their needs in whatever way you can. So I was lucky in that I had a flooring blog. I knew flooring like the back of my hand. And I would go into thousands of homes. So I knew flooring and I knew my customer because they would ask me the same questions over and over and over again. And I got better and better at asking them. So you really want to understand your niche and become an expert. I think it really helps when you know that. But if you don't, figure out some sort of way to immerse yourself. When I worked back in the consumer packaged goods company, it was like, okay, do in-home visits, do focus groups, do anything to understand your customer needs so you can best match those. From there, everything starts with what is your key topic that you're going to write about today? Okay, so I'm going to assume people have done keyword research, which I'm not going to go into depth because we could talk about that for hours, but rather, you already know your customer, you've done some keyword research, so you know your topic, right? So you're going to write about your topic. The very first step is then, what is the title? Like, what is the query that people are actually putting into Google? And write a title And that is what everything will stem off of. So you basically need to figure out what are they going to type in so that then they find my blog post. And you can do that through keyword research. You can do it through gut. But basically, you are answering a question. Like, query is the key. Someone is asking a question and you want them to find you. And that's what you're going to do. So that's the very first step. The very next step is you're going to outline your post with that. So like I said, you start with your title. The title is your most important thing. It's just like when we were kids and we learned how to write and, what's your title? What's your topic sentence? It's all like that. So you basically outline and say, okay, how am I going to answer this question? How am I going to answer this question thoroughly and everything that is related to that? So as an example, for me, a key question I would get would be like, dark versus light hardwood flooring, like which is better, right? That's a general question. But the truth is there are lots of sub questions underneath that, like, dark versus light, like which is more popular or which is more expensive or less expensive, which is going to sell my home faster, which takes longer. So you have to think about all those questions and basically outline it. And those become topic sentences or said in Google terms or SEO terms, if you will, because Google, they're the biggest, but they all follow the same principles. So basically, what does my customer need to ask? And each of those are going to be what are called H2 headings. So your title is your H1, and then your subtopics in there are H2s, and you can go further, and do H3s, but it's basically just how am I outlining something? Like, what is the logic? How will I answer that question?
Right. Yes. I think the outline is the best way to really describe it because it's kind of like old school, the way that we were taught to do outlines with the Roman numerals and the large A and then the little a and the little numbers and whatever else, just to kind of organize it all. I love, though, the fact that you started off with really hammering in the fact about you have to know your audience and the problems that they have. Because a lot of times we see bloggers, especially back then, back in 2009, 2010, we both probably started right around the same time.
Yep.
That people just kind of wrote what they wanted to write. It wasn't a matter of thinking about how am I going to serve? How am I going to answer the problems that my audience has? So I love that. So if we were to go back, because I think there's a lot of listeners that think about it and they have content out there where they're looking at it and saying, okay, how do I update old blog posts for SEO? What would that look like?
Okay, good question. So first, let me go back to what you just said a second ago. Blogging was very different back then. It definitely was. People were just using blogging like an online journal or something. And I remember my dad saying to me, like, who's going to want to read your blog? Like, what do you have to say? And I said, oh, I don't want them to read my blog. I don't care about that. All I want them to do is when they have a need for hardwood flooring or carpeting or whatever, that they will find me. So I started with that in mind. Who do I want to find me? And truthfully, I wanted more people to find me for hardwood flooring because that was more popular and more profitable than carpeting. So everything started with that. What are their needs? Not what do I want to write about?
Right.
So really, the first thing people should really learn is SEO and their customer and what are their wants and needs. So if you haven't learned that, like, do that now. Like, I don't care if you had to put things on pause, but learn it. And then learn that logic and just start doing it. I have a couple of SEO ebooks. I have an advanced course too. But basically, when people are just randomly writing or journaling about stuff, and I hate to say this because people are going to get mad at me, but most of that is probably useless. So it's like, don't even bother to go back with just, if you were just writing whatever you felt like, fine. I don't really care. Do everything well and correctly going forward. And then once you learn SEO, what I tell people is go back and try to optimize your top 10 articles. Don't worry about all the rest, only the top 10. If you have more time, go do number 11 through 20, and that's probably it. But do things well going forward, because if you never were writing about a topic that may or may not be relevant, it's really hard to retrofit. It's way easier to start a new article that is, in fact, going to be found. Because if people aren't searching for it, like what's the point, right? You're just wasting your time. So what I tell people is, do those top 10 articles. You can do one a week and write one new blog post a week, and just do that. And after 10 weeks, you'll be in great shape. If you want to do more, go for it. This is not about quantity. It's always quality over quantity. So in some senses, it doesn't matter how many bad or boring or, I'm going to call it mediocre articles that you wrote. They don't count. You've wasted your time. That's a sunk cost, right? So just focus on writing good articles going forward, and don't drown yourself in the mistakes you've already made. You have to move forward in this business. What do they always say? Like, done is better than perfect, or something like that. But I've gone back and I learned SEO a lot between, let's call it 2010 and 2012. And I went back and edited my articles over and over. But I started from probably a more logical point than if they're. I've coached people where they've just started, and I've coached people that have already had 1,000 blog posts and have been blogging for 7 to 10 years and quote unquote did everything wrong or nothing focused. Just move forward. Like, that's what you need to do. Move forward and keep going. And I have made so many mistakes in this business. It's not even funny. And there's no point in, rehashing that. Just move forward. That's my advice.
So for the ones that may have some of those articles, because I can remember those articles when we used to journal, does it make sense to actually delete that old content, or is there another way around it so that it will sit better with Google?
Right. So that's a difficult question to answer, and you need to use good judgment. So I'm just going to say that up front. All right. So you can basically go back and put things into different buckets, like your top 10 or ones that either could or should do well for keyword research. And you can put that into bucket of, I'm going to improve these. And I actually have an advanced course on how to do that, which is called Easy SEO Revamp. And we can talk about that more in a minute. But you'll basically do that. Then you'll have a whole bunch of ones where you might say, these are worthless, like totally worthless. They're off topic. They have no chance of anything. And I'd probably say usually in those cases, it's better to delete those, because when you're writing things that are off topic, it, first of all, not only can it confuse your customer, but it can confuse Google as well. So often you can delete those and you can redirect them to something, whatever way you want to do it. But then you have another bucket, which is basically, okay, I want to, these are not good the way they are, but I could combine like 3 or 4 articles together and make it a much stronger post, right? So, I've even gone back. I remember one article I wrote in, 2012, and I was looking at it in maybe 2015 or 16 or something like that. And I was like, oh, I already wrote something about this. I'm just going to improve it. And I read it and I was like, who the heck wrote this? Like, this doesn't even sound like me. Like, this is such a terrible article, because my writing skills and my SEO skills were so much stronger in 2016 versus 2017. So rather than try to improve that article, I wrote a completely fresh article. That one, of course, was not getting much traffic. Like, everything about it was just plain awful, to the point where I was like, wait, did someone break into my WordPress site and write this for me? It was so bad. So I just rewrote it. I redirected the article. You can take, a few articles together, because back then a lot of people would write shorter articles, like maybe 300 to 500 words, and they might have parts of stuff that's relevant. but you start fresh, you do it all right, you get the URL right too. So you can just, you have to kind of like put them into buckets, like worthless, let's get rid of them. But sometimes with Google, if you get rid of, let's say 200 or 300 articles, like who knows what will happen. So, some people have done that. And then what they do is they see a decline in their traffic, which of course, freaks them out. But then later they will see a big upswing in their traffic. But during that, phase in there, they're going to be freaked out. So I kind of gradually do things. I will do like a few at a time. So I don't have any, like, I'm going to get rid of 200 or 300 articles. That makes no sense. And, especially since 2015 or 16, I kind of like would pare down my articles, get rid of the ones that were not so good or improve them or something like that. But if you've had a blog since, 2010 or 12 or whatever, and you haven't done that, my advice would be a little bit more careful in doing that.
Yes. I think it was really important that you emphasize the fact that to make sure that you go through and do a redirect, because of course we know that if you delete those and you leave some links that are out there, and it's going to end up hurting you. So I think that's an important piece of it. Right. I also personally have no indexed things in the past.
Yes.
When it is something that is irrelevant. I'm not going to go through and want to necessarily do all the redirects and try to find all the way that it's linked. So doing a no index is also something that I think you can definitely take that route as well.
Yeah, you definitely can. I mean, the cool thing about redirects is usually it only takes, a minute or so. So I personally favor that versus no index. I use no index in a different way, which I'll tell you in 1 second. But basically, if you redirect it using like a 301 redirect, the free plugin is called redirection. So if you do that, if it turned out that anything was linked to that post, like even within your blog post or an external backlink, that will still stay with you. So that's why that's a stronger option. And no index, I generally will use if I write something that's quote unquote off topic. So,
right.
All right. So I'm going to contradict myself as I say this. So, my site is about flooring and painting. But I also do now, not by design or plan, had I planned everything ahead of time, everything would have been better. But I basically have some SEO, books and resources, a few little articles about blogging. I don't really do that much on there, but those are completely unrelated to home decor, right? And so my home decor audience will get confused if they see that, and Google will too. So if I do a few pages on that I will no index, and I will use that there. So it's there, but it doesn't, I basically hide everything from both my consumers, my regular home decor consumers, and Google as well. And that's where I'll use no index. And you can do that in Yoast, which is a free plugin. Do not pay for the paid Yoast version, but you can do it that way. So there are different ways to do stuff. But I'm with you in terms of sometimes it's just easier to, whether it's make something private or do whatever, because I was going through some stuff a few weeks ago too. And I was like, okay, I don't want people to see this, but I personally want to see it because I want to reuse that somehow. So I might just make it, private or no in it or whatever. So you have different options there depending on what it is you need to do. But I would say that if you have what you yourself would classify as worthless content, yeah, probably get rid of it and redirect it. But just don't do hundreds of them at once. Do it gradually. Make a list, check it off. That's what you do.
Yes. No. So now you mentioned you are offering a free SEO course that's delivered right to my listeners' inboxes. Can you tell me a little about what they can expect to learn from it?
Sure. So it's really a 5-day free email course. And I basically go over a lot of the basic SEO stuff. So, I wrote this a while ago, so I had to remember what's in here. But I basically go over common mistakes and myths that people think. So, for example, Yoast. Okay, now I use Yoast. Okay, so I'm not saying not to use Yoast, but a lot of new bloggers think, oh, I'm all set for SEO because I use Yoast, and that couldn't be further from the truth. Like Yoast will help you with about 5% of SEO, but it's not going to tell you whether or not you rank. It's not going to tell you tons of things that are important. So use it, but don't be dependent on it. It's just a guideline. And sometimes the information is not the best. It's like if I want to lose weight, I can get a scale and I can measure myself, right? But the scale is not going to make me actually lose the weight. It's only going to measure it. But I have to do the hard work. I have to, eat better foods, exercise more, and then it's going to tell me whether or not I'm doing well. So learn SEO for sure. Also, it doesn't matter if you use Yoast or Rank Math or all-in-one SEO. They're all basically the same thing. None of them will give you SEO. They will all just, measure, are you doing okay on this sort of stuff? So learn it. And then I also talk about the importance of long tail versus short tail research, where to use some free and or inexpensive keyword tools that will help as well. Let's see, what else do I talk about in here? Oh, I go through meta descriptions, which most people don't understand what that is. It sounds like it's a big, scary word, but it's really not. And a few other little tips in there.
That's
I can't even
perfect.
see what I wrote down. But anyway, it's meant to be helpful. It's not meant to be like, okay, just use SEO, because SEO traffic is wonderful. Okay. So I love SEO traffic because it's much more profitable. It's longer lasting. It's actually less work. And personally, my thought is if you combine that with social media, you actually can create some synergy in there as well. But in the long run, it's less work, it's more reliable, and it's more profitable because I will make more money on those pages. If I'm monetizing on ads, I will get more on that. It will go visit more pages on my site. If I have products, they are more likely to buy my products. If I want an email list, and hint, you should have an email list. Don't be like me. But you will get more email subscribers. So it really is really higher quality traffic, and you really want that. So I didn't just want to create a free course like, oh, SEO is so important and here is why, but actually give people some meaningful, actionable tips that they can go and implement.
Perfect. So we are going to make sure that we link to that in the show notes. My listeners also always
Awesome.
know that they can always send me a DM on Instagram at Jenny_Melrose to have me send you that link so that you can get signed up for that free SEO course. Debbie, where else are the best places to connect with you?
Yeah. So my site is theflooringgirl.com. I'm actually about to create a podcast, which I hope to launch in, maybe a month or so. And if you go to theflooringgirl.com/podcast, you can actually get on the waiting list there if you want to hear more from me. And also on my site, I told you a few minutes ago that I basically hide everything. So the only way you can find any of my SEO stuff is if you go to the homepage, theflooringgirl.com, and go to my books and courses and click on that. And then you will find everything in there. That's an example of a page that I've no indexed so that I won't confuse Google. They'll still know I blog about flooring and painting, and that's my area of expertise.
Perfect. Well, we are going to make sure to link to those in the show notes so that everybody can hop over and take a look and definitely follow along with you. I appreciate you so much for taking the time to speak with me.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm so glad to meet you. So hopefully this is helpful information. And I just want to say that SEO has been my key to success. That's how I drove traffic on my blog. It's how I initially monetized as well. And it's what helped me get out of that huge amount of debt in a very short period of time. So thank you.
Of course. No, thank you. All right. Well, there you have it. You can see how Debbie was able to use SEO to be able to drive traffic to her site over the years and continue to do so with any of the updates that she is making to her site in order to fit into the updates that Google is making. I hope by now you've already sent me a DM on Instagram to make sure that you grab that email list guide. We want to always make sure that we are growing our list with the people that are coming to our site so that they return. And as always, I appreciate you all so much when you leave a rating review. If you haven't already done so, I would so appreciate it if you took the time to do so. It literally takes less than 2 minutes. You leave a quick rating, quick review, and it helps to get great guests to come on to the show. All right, guys, until next time, I will see you all then.